Deepak Chopra once said, every time you are tempted to react in the same old way, ask if you want to be a prisoner of the past or a pioneer of the future. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nerdy Optometrist, a podcast channel for all things optometry. And this is your host, Ukti Vora. Please remember to like not just this episode, but all the other episodes on your favorite streaming platform. Diving back to the quote that I started off with, I have someone who is pioneered in the space which we're all pretty much scared about. Let me introduce a true nerd. Dr. Eric Rosenberg is a cornea and complex anterior segment surgeon at SightMD and an assistant professor of ophthalmology at New York Medical College, where he had completed his residency. He pursued his fellowship under the faculty at Weill Cornell and a Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. He is passionate about education in addition to the integration between technology, engineering, and medicine. We all struggle with one, he's got all three covered. Currently, Dr. Rosenberg serves on the Executive Digital Committee at ASCRS and is one of the co-founders of MetaMed Media. Metaverse is becoming a reality thanks to him and his colleagues. A very warm welcome to the Nerdy family.
Thank you so much, Ukti. That was a beautiful introduction and a beautiful quote. Let's start by saying that I have not heard that one before, and I think it's a beautiful thing, right? Because it pushes us all to push our own boundaries, right? Otherwise, we get stuck in complacency, and the way that things were done are not always traditionally going to be the way. It's the way we're comfortable, and that's great. But let me be the first to say that I'm not technology's biggest fan, but it's primed to be something bigger than it currently is, and that's an exciting part about it.
But that's also what is part of being visionary, which I believe you are. But before we get into technology and all the amazing things you're working on, I actually want to start with my favorite question. How did you bump into eye care? Like, how did your journey begin?
Oh man, that's a challenging question. I took a very circuitous way into ophthalmology. I started my career in life off as an engineer. So I have undergraduate and graduate degrees in engineering, both mechanical and biomedical. And My wife went the medical school route, and I thought it was fascinating and interesting. And both my parents happened to be physicians as well. And um, I thought it was it was interesting. So I decided to try my hand at applying to medical school, and I wound up going to where my wife was in medical school. And following that, she always knew she wanted to do ophthalmology. Her father's been an ophthalmologist for 35 years, and that was going to be her path. I always wanted it to be her path. So I looked elsewhere, and I found general surgery for a few years. I thought I really wanted to do general surgery, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning in somebody's intestines. And I thought, hey, I did well in medical school. What am I doing here? Um, it just wasn't a passion of mine. I only kid. It was not something I enjoyed reading. And then I started picking up her textbooks, and I thought how much more fascinating and intricate and wild the eye was. It really intertwined some of my passions, especially in neurology. My thesis for my graduate degree in engineering was on kinesin molecular biomotors. So I was always very interested in neurology in general. And then, long story short, I found ophthalmology, and I started reading her textbooks. I fell in love. I took a year off to, retool my application, and did so. Wound up in ophthalmology, and that's how I wound up in eye care. The best field that ever existed, I gotta say.
Absolutely. And I always keep saying people that whether it was a planned decision or whether you've bumped into eye care, optometry, or ophthalmology, there's no going back. There is so much to do and it's so fascinating. And I'm sure your journey kind of highlights the same. So, as I briefly mentioned in the introduction, right, like you are practicing ophthalmologist, you do cornea and complex anterior segment surgery. But along with that, you're also an assistant professor. You also teach. So, tell us a little more about how did that journey of like starting ophthalmology, yes, but how did you decided to kind of go into teaching and how does that happen?
I think, us going down this road, no matter who you are in eye care, you know that there are teachers who brought you to where you were. And that's an exciting feature, bringing up the next generation to be better than who you were. And, I always noticed that in my mentors, their capacity to understand your level, bring the knowledge to you, and then realize that you're going to, advance the field where they just fell short. And that's how any field within medicine evolves. It's just that you need to train that next generation to be better than you. And I always told the residents who came after me and the medical students who I try to help out, here and there, they think I'm joking. I said, I tell them that I expect them to be better than I am. And that is my expectation of them. They need to be. This is this. There's so much to this field that we all know that the depth is just unknown. It's, you know, when they were first trying to figure out how deep the trenches were in the Pacific Ocean, they just thought it just went down to infinity. That's the depth I feel within ophthalmology and within neurology. We just don't understand so much, and there's so much yet to be uncovered. We're only merely trying to bring tools to the forefront to allow people to be able to explore, more of the unknown. what what drove me to do that though is one of my mentors was a very unknown ophthalmologist, and nobody seems to know him. His name's Eric Donenfeld, and he once told me that you can make your practice what you want it to be. And that always resonated with me and stuck with me. And I think that that's a really important message for everybody to know, because no matter where you are in eye care, there's always a need, there's a niche, and whatever drives you and your passion is, that's where you're going to excel at. If all you wanted to do was pterygium surgeries and that's what drove you to be better the next day, that's what you should do. If your thing is doing hard RGP contact lenses and nothing makes you happier than being able to get people the best possible vision they could possibly get who would otherwise not be able to see, that's fantastic. That's amazing work, right? You just need to find what motivates you. And if it's niche or if it's more of a global picture, that's okay too. But I always knew that research was going to be a part of what I did just based on my background and, my own loves. Um, and my wife and I always saw eye to eye with that. We wanted to be able to kind of move the needle a little bit, and when it comes down to education and training that next generation, that's a huge component of it. If you don't have people understanding what it is you're doing, that work's never going to be continued. And if that's something that drives them, then that's great. Then they can take it to that next chapter.
Absolutely. And I really like how you said certain things very casually, but I have to highlight the fact that you're looking forward to have better versions of eye care professionals in the future. So you are taking the lead, not just to teach them, but to make sure, and you're comfortable saying out loud that, hey, you need to be better than me or better than all of us who does exist today. Like go push these boundaries because sometimes we are scared of the newer generation being like way ahead, whether it is like, adapting new technology or new, like even if I look at my 5 year or 10-year-old nephew, he knows much more than I knew when I was 10-year-old. So you suddenly feel like, oh my God, like what are you talking? Like they should come at like 18, not at 10.
But that's the great part, right?
That's the
They're
great
able
part,
to
yes.
intermingle their world with the current world, and the vision of the current world is not a bad one.
Yes,
There, there's obviously a lot going on in it, but as far as our own profession and our own world, it is that marvelous, right? It is that
yes.
spectacular where everybody's going to bring their own unique features to the even though some of the medical students who I help now, I'm helping them with the ophthalmology residency and whatnot. And some of them are so ingrained in tech that I mean, I'm learning a ton from them. It's just it's super rewarding in that way. It's not that I did it to expect that. It's just that seems to be a byproduct of it, and it's fun. I'm learning so much from my students, which is awesome. I mean, that tells you that they're going to push it, right?
Yes, and I really love seeing that passion that is there in your voice, in your expression, the way you're sharing your journey. And I can resonate the fact that even when I started podcasting, right, I was trying to just ask questions, but the amount of things I learned from each and every one is fascinating. Like I didn't sign up for it, but it just happened. It's the byproduct. And that's the most fun part about like learning from people's experiences, their journeys, and understanding what amazing things they are bringing in this industry. So you did share about like, how practicing into ophthalmology happened, being a professor happened, and why you're so passionate about it because you want to kind of build the future or support the future to be them, to make them more informed decisions. But tell us about, of course, you loved technology. I think that's evident. You started with engineering, then you also loved medicine. You moved to medicine. Those two angles I totally understand. But I want to know when did you feel that it was the right time, or when did you realize that, it's time for you to step up and incorporate technology in eye care? How did that relationship actually happen?
So that's a great question. And that's not something many people have asked me. And the truth is that I actually maneuvered into medicine because within engineering, and I think your husband could attest to it, maybe, is that there tends to be a glass ceiling for engineers in some of these larger corporations, especially if you don't have your MBA or MD or any other more health related science or business degrees. You make it to a point, and that's kind of where it is. And these corporations, from what I've noticed, are run mostly by the MBAs and those people who understand, the corporate architecture, which there's nothing wrong with, but you have to appreciate that going through that. You will not be able to run things or do anything other than the development in your particular niche with that particular degree. So I thought to myself that, pursuing a medical degree would be helpful if I wanted to leverage back into industry. So I would be a little bit more useful to that particular architecture. And once I was in it, once you find something you love to do, right, your plans don't always, come to fruition. So I never made my way back into industry per se, but I do see a strong value of working with industry. Um, and the reason for that is, I think the days are over where individual doctors are going to be able to, invent this knickknack or this, widget to be able to help a large number of people. I think that there are still going to be those outliers where you can do that, but I don't think that's going to be the status quo of how the field advances. I think we've come to a point in time where the complexities of management and diagnosis and treatment are such that you actually need a larger team to be able to create solutions that don't currently exist. And in appreciating that, it's helped me to understand the role of industry and practicing physicians. There really needs to be a strong collaborative effort because I don't think we're going to see good solutions if we all don't bring our strengths to the table. Um, and a lot of doctors in general can be afraid of doing that because they're afraid of people taking their ideas and, running with them without the doctors. But the truth is, if you're the visionary and you're the person that sees, X, Y, or Z thing, and you bring it to an industry company and you express to them you want to work with them to develop these things, there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of avenues to pursue that path. And that's kind of how I see our industry partners in all this. I think that they can advance the field without us, and truthfully, we're going to struggle to advance the field without them. And kind of bridging that gap and having a little bit of an understanding of both is also very helpful. And sometimes you don't necessarily need an end goal. You can just enjoy what you're doing and love what you're doing, and your path finds you. And that's a really fun thing. And that's happened more recently to me versus in the past. I always saw it as me being behind everybody else because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was older than most, right? I'm playing catch up and everything else like that. And now I appreciate it for what it was. It was meant to be. It was a journey that we're all meant to experience and go down. And it's a fascinating question because I thought I was going to do something different, and wound up doing this, which
But
is
you
not.
are doing different. You are doing something very, very different. And that's actually what we're going to get to next. But I was just stuck by the fact that you said that, MBA would be an easy route. You decide to do an ophthalmology or like do medicine. Trust me, most of them would have just chosen getting an MBA done and move up the ladder. So you
MBAs are
have
hard. I took some of those classes with the kids at Warden, and they are really, really smart kids.
Of
Um,
course, I'm not saying that it's not hard, but going through medicine and working through medical college to become a surgeon, you're already there, like you were in
I just told
MBA.
you I was the dumb one, right? That should tell you that the opportunity cost of those years is real.
Well, then you actually have a better shortcut, the workaround, which allows you to be where you would have probably been there. And I'm really glad that you brought up a very good point that one thing that I really like about people like yourself who are innovators and inventors, the fact that these industries that we're talking about are going to invent because they have the best technical mind. But we need to give them the medical insights and we need to own and run with it because otherwise they will come with the technology which we have to adopt to at some point. But here we can actually lead the way and bring in our medical insights to it. So which is taking control than just being a follower. And that's fantastic for people like yourself who have been doing this in our industry.
Oh, thank you. And absolutely for anybody listening to this as well, it doesn't only come from, deciding, which particular program or back end to use or what front end. It's day-to-day stuff too. They're always looking to work with people because they want it to run seamlessly with you. Otherwise, it's going to be created without you, right? That
Right.
that we know. They have a solution for something. EHR is the best example of it. Pretty much the government said, here's, $60 billion, go. And what did most people do? Well, when they developed it, they created a one-to-one carbon copy of what they were doing on paper to what they need to do on the computer. And that's not the best use of technology. Technology has never evolved things by carbon copying what it was in the past, right? The typewriter is a good example of that, right? When they started with the keys and everything else like that. The computer was never meant just to be the typewriter. It's evolved into a magnificent thing that is its own entity and something that you would not be able to live without.
Yes.
Um, and so carbon copying is never the way. And the way you get out of the carbon copy is actually working, being the intellectual that you are, from your practice, getting to work with these companies and telling them how things flow. This is how my practice works because there's going to be 10 different models that they're going to have to adjust with, and they want it to work for everybody. I guarantee you that. And we're on this precipice of all these digital technologies coming out. And it's going to be a wild thing, I suspect, in the next 5 years, where there's going to be a lot of solutions that interweave all our practices, ophthalmology, optometry, medicals, PMDs, cardiologists. We're going to see some of these solutions that just mesh a lot together. So the more vocal you are in this regard and the more input you give, the more you're going to get it out of it for the longevity of your career too.
Absolutely. And I really love the example you gave about a typewriter to like, a keyboard or like a computer. It's not copy pasting. And you need to kind of think beyond. And of course, not many of us can think beyond or be more futuristic with their vision. And sometimes technology is overwhelming, especially the fact that now you're seeing something coming left, right, and center. You're like, I just got done with this one app. Like, can you stop coming up with three more? So I totally understand that piece as well. But can you tell us, like, these, the reason that I want to go to the next part of our discussion is metaverse. It's something that we all randomly out of one day morning, everybody talks about metaverse. While I'm sure, things are still not yet clear that how that will play a role or what would it look like. You have already created MetaMed, and you also already had like a conference, like where people were actually presenting. So you have taken it a quite deep dive into that. But I know you had mentioned before we get into metaverse and MetaMed about digital visualization. Can you share us a little more about that before we go into metaverse and MetaMed?
Absolutely. Two of my favorite topics, so thank you. Um, with the digital visualization, I was fortunate to actually see in Ingenuity, which is Alcon's product. It's a 3D digital visualization scope, which ultimately means that you use cameras to visualize the operative field, and the cameras then go to a computer. And from the computer, it actually shows on a 55-inch OLED 3D television. You wear passive 3D glasses while you operate. So you're not affixed to the scope anymore. You don't look through the oculars. And for the most part, just the posterior segment surgeons were using it in its early development. And I asked both Kimberly Sippo and Chris Starr, who were my attendings at Cornell, and my fellowship preceptors, can we use this machine that the posterior segments are using it? And Dr. Sipple at the time was like, yeah, let's do it, right? And this is what it's made for. She recognized it, so she knew that I was up to the challenge of adding this to my surgical repertoire, and it was routine cataract surgery at that time. So we put it on one of the scopes and we did cataract surgery with it. And outside of Rob Weinstock and a few others, not many people were using it for anterior segment. And when I saw it sitting there in the corner before using it, I realized that this was the missing link to the entire ecosystem of digitization within my field and anterior segment, but also within posterior segment as well. You know, we have a digital footprint everywhere. When we sign people into the EHRs, our OCT machines, our DICOM servers, autorefractors, now there's digital phoropters and digital consultations. The only place that there wasn't a digital footprint was in the operating room. And this was the missing link because now you have a fully integratable, fully interwoven system that will be able to appreciate information both preoperatively and postoperatively and relate it to the intraoperative situation. And we go into ophthalmology mostly from the surgical element of it, but there are plenty of people who love the medical diagnostic, but the medical diagnostic part of ophthalmology, and that's a great thing to do too. But from where I was entering in, I really like the surgical element of it. And I realized that there's still a lot of art in medicine and surgery. And now we have a system that goes full patient journey, and we can start making our lives easier with some of the information that's coming from the OR, and now works within the system. Just like when we take the OCTs, just like when we take, the fundus photos, or the RNFLs, right? We made it so it was easy. It was on the EHR. It's not the most easy system. I personally miss paper and pencil because we still haven't optimized EHRs yet. But even with that said, it brings it to one home in one place. And now you're going to be able to overlay more advanced systems like machine learning, AI, on top of this data to not only go through the patient journey, but help you. We're developing AI-backed IOL algorithms now. So if you have a digital scope and we have preoperative biometry and we have Argos intraoperative aberrometry and biometry, we're probably going to come to a point in the very near future where we're not picking out intraocular lenses before surgery, but rather intraoperatively, right? Based on large population sets of how people did that come from this ethnicity or this background with this effective lens position, and this subjective outcome, we're going to be able to intertwine all that information because that's the beauty of AI is being able to process large amounts of data sets that would just be way too tedious and exhausting for us to do as humans. So a lot of people, who did I hear this from? I'm pretty sure it was either Ted Lang or Yannick Leiderman. They wanted to rename AI from artificial intelligence to augmented intelligence. And I love that because it's not replacing any of us by any stretch of the imagination. It's just going to help us to do what we do. There's still going to be art and medicine across the board for everybody. But wouldn't it be nice to have systems that help make things easier, more efficient, and run smoother? That's what the digital visualization was to me. And over time, I've gotten the pleasure of working with some of these companies, and we've developed, some programs and some digital overlays which make our lives easier. So, for example, let's say you have a scarred cornea and you have poor visualization, you can't see. And you still want to do the cataract surgery for this patient, but you don't want to send them to the retina specialist to do a pars plana vitrectomy and a lensectomy posteriorly. You want to do this all from an anterior approach. Well, you can inject trypan blue into the anterior chamber, and you can use something called Blue Boost, or now I think they renamed it to capsule detail mode. And what it does is it actually surveys every pixel in the screen, all 1 billion pixels for the color blue. And then if it picks up and registers a color blue, it actually auto enhances it. So now where you couldn't see before, the screen is digitally enhancing something that you couldn't see, and now you can see it and complete the
Wow,
rexness really safely. Yeah. So
that's pretty cool.
and this is just the tip of the iceberg. And think about what we can do now that computers are involved with the OR. We use visual light normally, right? So that's how
Yes.
we've traditionally done surgery. Why do we need to stay on the visual spectrum, right? Because now we have computer cameras that are able to pick up different wavelengths of light. We can start thinking outside the box of doing things safely. Light is toxic to the macula. We've shown that time and time again, and that's I mean, the initial case reports that came out with the initial operative microscopes were ridiculous. There's phototoxicity everywhere. But, with time, we figured out which wavelengths were better, and we have eclipse filters, and, we have, modulation of the light intensity. We have a lot of things that can actually change on the operating microscope to make it a safer journey, and especially the times. I mean, it used to be an hour to do a cataract, now it's 5 minutes.
Yes.
But we don't need to stay on that realm. So that's the fun, right? And these digital systems are only going to enhance it, especially if they take our input. So, whatever it is, if it's in the OR, if it's in clinic, even if it's on your way home and it has to do with a chart, right? That's something. And, passing off that information, to a contact of yours of a system that you use is only going to be beneficial because it's going to make your life easier and make everybody's life easier going forward.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more. And I love the facts you've shared with us because there were a few things which even I wasn't aware about it. So I'm glad that, you did bring up those examples and I love the fact that you mentioned that it is not artificial intelligence trying to replace us, but augmented intelligence, which is going to assist us. So let's keep it as your intelligent partner to help you grow in the career. And I really love the fact that we need to start thinking outside the box or rather just replace the box in the first case. But I know that we talked about digital visualization and you shared a lot about it, but you did take the next step of developing MetaMed, and you actually also went over like, doing like a conference around it where you were trying to teach, and I actually saw a short video on your website. I'll be dropping the link of the website in the description, so do check it out. It's super cool. So that I don't want to kind of share everything. I'll let you talk
No,
about
no,
the process.
take it away. I love
No,
it.
tell me about the whole process from did you have any other name to begin with? Sorry. I am always curious to know about stories behind names. Did you have any other name other than MetaMed? Or was that something that was
No,
there?
we were so Steve Houston, who's my partner in MetaMed, and I were brainstorming it when we first created it, and we didn't really come up with anything better. So I don't know that it's particularly amazing. It's just that we couldn't find anything better than MetaMed, and we did go through a whole host of strange names, but it was on the initiation of Meta forming, when Mark Zuckerberg changed it from Facebook to Meta. And then he started coming out, in favor and supporting metaverse-backed applications, seeing that as the future. Um, which we happen to actually think he's right about. It's just that it wasn't as financially beneficial to him as he initially thought, or his investors. So sorry if there's any Facebook investors in here. Um, But what really reinvigorated him too was Apple's announcement of getting into the metaverse as well, and these VR headsets.
Yeah.
Before it was just very niche, but Apple coming to the scene really tells people that this is going to be a mainstream product. Just like everything else that they've brought to market, this is going to be, not something you can't live without, but uh, you know, maybe something you can't live without. We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the origin of the name. And you know what? I'm probably going to give Steve credit for it. I bet you he came up with it. I can't remember, but it seems like something in his wheelhouse.
All right. So now tell us about this MetaMed verse. I would like to add the verse behind it. Just to kind of tell me, how did that journey happen? How did everybody's experience was? Tell us a little more about what that platform is all about. I would like you to share about it, like the entire purpose of that platform or the media.
Oh man, so it was maybe October, maybe a little bit earlier, September of, I'm gonna say 21. It might have been even earlier than that. Where I got the headset, the Oculus 2 or the Oculus, I forgot what it was at the time, and I was curious just because I like playing around with new toys and new developments. I wanted to see what it was capable of, and I was really shocked with how far it had come. And I think one of the pitfalls that Meta had with the wide scale adoption was people understanding what it can do differently than, let's say, WebEx or Zoom or anything else to bring people together to have discussions, and who it is that they're targeting. They went very broad scale. They painted with a broad brush stroke over everything and said this is for everyone. And I don't think it was at the time. I do think, however, it is something special for doctors in general. I think it's really important. And at the same time was when I was playing with the digital visualization systems. I noticed a problem where I was able to record my surgeries in 3D, but I wasn't able to replay them back in 3D. So, from the educational standpoint, if you want to train residents, you want to train medical students, you want them to see what it is that you're talking about. And if you're recording surgeries and content in 3D, there should be a mechanism for you to play it back to them in 3D so they can appreciate the depth. Um, Eye care in general is all 3D.
Yeah.
It's 100% 3D. It doesn't matter what you're in eye care. It is physics through and through. And When you start to get into the surgical elements of it, just the same. It's all about planes and tack angles and fulcrums, how you're pivoting your instruments and moving around. So all that really came into play when I wanted to convey, what it is that I'm talking about to somebody else. And um, I learned that we can kind of build a system where you can actually play back 3D content within a metaverse application. So I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. So I started playing around and I figured out something that was like roughly good enough to work. And then I made my first call to Steve Houston, who's a retina surgeon down in Orlando. And I said, Steve, I think I got something here because Steve had always been very active in developing technologies, Web3, NFTs, crypto, VR, and he has a very deep knowledge of these topics. And it really integrates well, and I'll explain why later. But I asked him, do you think that this is good enough? And he goes, yes. So from there on, he's like, we need to do something. And I was like, okay, so we'll do something. And that was the creation of MetaMed, and how it formed. And then we started bringing in colleagues into the metaverse with our 3D videos because Steve also operates on the Ingenuity. So he has a whole library, just as I do, of all 3D surgical videos. And we started bringing in our colleagues to have grand rounds and just talk. It was very grassroots. There's no CME credits. There's nothing that drives people there other than wanting to be better and understand and learn. And nowadays when we host what we call retinaverses or MetaMed Media events, we usually get 40 to 50 people in on one shot, no problem. And we get a presenter that sits at the front and has an avatar, so you you
Yes.
can you can either access it from your phone, from your tablet, from your computer, or you can use a VR headset. The VR headset is the most immersive, and that's how you get the content back in 3D. But you control your avatar. It is 3D spatial audio. So as you get closer to someone, the voice gets louder. So it's no different than in real life and going to a meeting. So you walk up to somebody, you can have a discussion, and it feels like you're there with them, which is the most wild part of it all, because we're talking with colleagues all across not just the US, but the world. And it blows through, geopolitical borders, everything. There's no one who can't access it. So if you want to come in and learn how they're treating diabetic retinopathy in Mexico, and we're having a speaker from there, you know, we just had that. We actually just had Harvard, which is Mass Eyecare, do a joint grand rounds with Apex, which is a Mexican institution. They did a joint grand rounds to talk about retinal pathologies and how each group treats it, which is wildly different because they're located in different areas, and access to resources are different.
Yeah.
It's different. So it's fun learning those things about your colleagues. And when you go to the meetings after you've been with them in the metaverse, you know, it feels like you were just with them last week.
Yes.
So, so we were just at AAO, and at AAO, I ran into a couple of the ophthalmologists that come on to, MetaMed routinely for lectures, and we were joking because we were like, I didn't I just see you, and because your avatar, which you build is you in the metaverse, you can make it look just like you. So I have it actually integrates a picture of your face, and it puts your face over the face of the avatar. The jaw moves up and down, so it's like you're talking. It shows your teeth.
Yes.
It's pretty wild. It feels like you're there with people, and unlike, let's say, Zoom or WebEx or anything else, this is a two-dimensional conversation. It's usually between one or two parties. If somebody else wants to come up, then everybody else goes quiet, right? The other two speakers, and then you have it's very, for lack of a better word, two-dimensional. When we start venturing into this metaverse, it's three-dimensional. Um, there's groups, people congregate together to have like discussions like they would at the conference hall. Your capacity to be able to digest 3D content is present. So if you have 3D videos, you can now play back 3D videos and talk about depth and talk about things that actually matter in surgery. On top of being able to do anything. It's a virtual world, so we can build out any environment to do anything. The most recent one we just built out is an eyeball theater. So we created a giant eyeball, and you actually teleport into the eyeball, and it has stadium seatings in it. You can actually see the zonules and the ciliary body and the processes. There's a lens inside that's behind you, and then as you're looking in, there's the retina, but then if somebody's presenting, a screen comes up in front of the retina. But I mean, you can use your imagination. We can build anything or do anything and have these very lifelike conversations and discussions. So, uh, from our experience, people have been really loving it because it's not only is it different, it's better in some ways where you get to stay at your house. Let's say you have a 2-year old like I do. You get to spend as much time with them as you can. Meanwhile, still interacting, still engaging, still learning, all the things that matter to you as a doctor in general. So it's a really exciting platform, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm very biased towards it, but um, it offers up a lot that had been missing in the current paradigm of education and teaching. So that was the existence of MetaMed, and how we came to today.
Love it. And I for all the listeners, I'm sure you're all excited to kind of check out what this MetaMed is all about. And they do have some introductory videos which shows a sneak peek into their meta world, where you can also see people in avatars and speaking and glimpse of these 3D videos. I'll be dropping the link of their website in the description, so definitely do check it out. It is quite crazy. It is very unique. And the fact that you go closer to someone and you can start hearing the conversation and you can stand in groups and like have your own private conversations. I have had that experience as well, and it is definitely crazy. It was one of my favorite experiences about the metaverse or the meta world. You're like, oh, I can hear here. I can go here and talk to this person. And then I'm like, okay, I am done with this conversation. I can just walk over to someone else and hear what they're having the discussion about. It was pretty cool. But I'm sure when you talk about all these technologies and developments, right, it wasn't it is great, it does exist, but it wasn't such a smooth ride for you. Did you have any roadblocks or challenges on the way?
There's always roadblocks and challenges, and you know, technology is only to a certain capacity, right? So we're limited by what currently exists. A great example of that right now is that it takes a lot of bandwidth to be able to bring all these people into a room, to be able to have, arms that go left and right, especially as you're moving the controllers and the walking, and playing the 3D video and whatever else objects we bring in. Well, we do have like a max capacity of usually about 70 to 80. Otherwise, it gets a little bit buggy. We do have ways to avail ourselves of that problem, especially for larger meetings where we actually just mirror rooms, so you can bring thousands of people into the same, lecture, but you're not all in that same room together, if that makes sense.
Mm,
But
yeah.
understanding why we're limited in some fashions. At one point, somebody wanted, the avatar hair to be longer. They were very upset about, the length of the hair. So uh, there's there's always a whole host of issues and developments, and we haven't really run a metaverse company. Um, there's nobody to pin ourselves against, in terms of how it is that we're building out the company and what it is that we're doing. There's others that create surgical simulation, which are really cool. There's something called Fundamental VR, which just saw a huge Series A raise, which was great, and exciting to see. Alcon's building out their own surgical simulator. Um, you know, the really nice thing about these is that they're going to be integratable and interoperable. So what we're trying to develop going forward, and we're reaching out to some of these companies where, okay, well, if you want to come to, let's say, MetaMed for the meetings and the discussion and everything, and then you want to go try your hand in the simulators, we can build a portal because it's all on Unity, that you go from our platform to their platform and, work seamlessly like that. Like, okay, well, I just saw you do this scleral fixated IOL. I want to practice that virtually in another room. Now, do I think that this is a replacement for anything in real life? The answer is no. Um, I don't think anything replaces real life. I think that the human-human contact, um,
Absolutely.
the meetings that we have are unbelievably important. Real eyeballs. I mean, you need to practice on, even if it's cadaveric specimens, whatnot. You need to feel human tissue before you get into somebody's eye. Does it help you understand and appreciate and learn the steps? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
And we know that definitively. There's been a bunch of studies looking at how VR is training surgeons across the board, not just ophthalmology, be able to retain the knowledge for the steps that are needed to be done at the time of surgery. And it is unequivocally better. The retention is higher in people who use the VR surgical simulators. There's no question about that. But again, just like AI, we said at the beginning, it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence. This is an augmentation of what we currently have. This is the next step forward. This is, for the person who can't leave their house. Let's say they have, family responsibilities, let's say they have a busy practice 6 days a week. This is an important adjunct to things that don't currently, let's say they're a single mother caring for their kid. They're still a practicing doctor and they want to be able to interact with some of these, world leaders in whatever their field is. That option should be available to everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's really nice to be able to have that and not just be on this, 2D WebEx, like, oh, that's a cool video, but I still don't really understand it. Or I can't talk to the person because they're giving a WebEx meeting to 1,000 other people who are in the audience. And I'm too afraid to raise my hand. That doesn't, for a fact, it doesn't exist in the metaverse. You go up and you talk to whoever you want to talk to, and you
Yes.
watch what you want to watch, and you move around just like you would in a real conference.
Absolutely. And I totally understand. I actually recently went to one of the VR 3D experiences. They make you wear all the sensors and we did play Squid Games. I'm not sure if many who have played.
Yeah.
And it was wild. We literally were yelling, though we are in like a closed room. There is nothing, but there are times when you would step or do something wrong and you fall because there were games similar to challenge. And the experience was so real. Oh my God, we everybody were yelling, though we are just there standing, and you would feel that vibration. So it was like all senses were kind of engaged. So we definitely were blown away by that experience, and I'm glad that gradually from 2D to 3D, 3D to more depth in terms of our experiences will happen with the advancement in technology, and also the fact that it helps you be more global, not just understand what's happening next door, but understand where the world is going, and also give you an awareness of where you stand versus where your colleagues, and how can you help and learn from each other. And I feel that's the great way of looking at technology and embracing it. And I think you already did touch upon smart solutions about like, how things can be shared. But how do you envision, or do you have anything more to add about like, how do you envision these smart solution being part of the future in the eye care industry?
That's a great question. So, I think because we have digital operating scopes, we have the method to be able to live stream surgeries into the metaverse. If you have residents who are halfway across the world and they want to learn how to do a challenging case in 3D and watching it live, that's going to be available. And we'll be able to have libraries of digital 3D content. Let's say that we held a meeting at MetaMed and we brought in, Eric Donenfeld of the world to be able to give a lecture on, you know, I don't know, IOLs or something else, and you missed it, right? You couldn't make it, your life was too busy. Well, we're organizing something right now where we've built out a library and you can actually just access the content on demand. And not only can you access it on demand, interestingly, you can 3D volumetrically record events. And what that means is that we can record everybody as they exist in the theater, moving around how they move around, all the audio, all the, all the content that's on the screens and everything else like that. So if somebody does want to come back in at a later date, they feel like they were there at that meeting. Because everybody who's there has already asked the questions, to the presenter's answered, and the 3D audio still exists for that particular region. So you can feel like you were present for that meeting that you missed and the content. So, it really democratizes a lot of information, which is kind of exciting. And at MetaMed, obviously, it's run by two physicians. Um, so, you know, we make sure that there's no barriers to access for doctors in general or medical students or any student or anything. So if you want to come in, you just come in. We post our events on our online bulletin. Usually we do it every other Sunday night for the Retinaverse rounds. Everybody's welcome. We share the room code. The only thing is, I think we ask you to register just so it makes it easier for us to send out the emails as to what the room code is to get into it. You download an application called Engage either on your iPad or your computer or your VR headset, and you're in. So again, we want the least amount of barriers to entry to people, getting knowledge. We work with our industry partners to help us to be able to do this, and they see the utility in us learning and being better doctors in general. So we're happy to host not just ophthalmology. We started getting into podiatry and orthopedic surgery. We're happy to get into optometry. We're happy to get into anything. If you want to host something, just let us know. Tell us, what the purpose is and what your goals are, and we're happy to facilitate, obviously.
That is wonderful. I'm so excited to kind of listen to all these things. And I really like the goal that you have is to help students help the healthcare industry and all the individuals who can benefit from it. So I like the fact that, it is not limited or restricted to one particular community or industry. It's for one, it's for all. But I know we did talk a lot about technology, about medicine. We did, but I think it's time for us to go to my game segment so we can know you a little better. So I will have, it's a simple game called This or That. I'll give you two options. You have to pick which is your favorite option, just so that we know you a little better. Uh,
Okay.
all right. Are you ready for it?
No, but let's do it anyway.
It's a simple game. All right. Are you a dog person or a cat person?
A dog person for sure.
All right. Phone call or text?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I like both. Can I like both?
No,
Is
you
that
have to pick
yeah,
one.
you have to pick one. Okay. Maybe text. It's faster and you can multitask.
Okay. Glasses or contact lenses?
Oh, I'm an emmetrope.
If you had to pick, what is your preference?
If I had to pick, I'd probably like glasses.
Glasses, all right. Online shopping or shopping in store?
Oh, online shopping for sure.
Online shopping.
Absolutely. And Peapod deliveries and anything that means I don't have to go do something. Yeah,
Uh,
that's an
all
easy.
right. Cake or ice cream?
Oh, ice cream.
Okay. Oceans or mountains?
Oceans for sure. One thing I don't understand is people are given a finite number of time to go vacation, right? To have off. And if you choose to go somewhere where you can lose a toe or an extremity, such as the mountains and skiing, I don't understand you. I just don't. How do you justify going there when you can go somewhere warm that has a beach? I feel like it's psychopathic to not choose the beach. Just saying. Any of you listeners, you can prove me wrong. I don't get it.
Noted. Oceans it is. Probably for everyone. All right, next question. Horror movies or comedy?
Oh, comedy for sure.
Okay. Do you like watching a movie during your downtime or reading?
Um, Both, but reading probably more.
All right, and that was it. You did wonderful in your this or that game. We definitely know a little more about you and what your preferences or what you like. Uh, with that, do you have any final takeaway message for all my listeners?
No, other than listen to more of these podcasts. You're an awesome host, Ukti, and it's really been a privilege to be on your podcast here. And I look forward to listening to a lot more too. And my car rides are long, and hopefully this was valuable to somebody. And please feel free to contact me if you ever need anything.
Absolutely. I would definitely like to add, he's one of the kindest person I have met and interacted. I just reached out to him and here he is spending an hour talking and sharing all his insights. So definitely do reach out to him. And I love the fact that he's always open to conversations and like sharing more insights. So if you have any crazy ideas that you want to conceptualize, if you want to learn more about MetaMed or any technology where I'm sure he can assist and understand because he has that geeky nerdy engineering mind, do reach out to him.
That's
But
why I'm on this show, the Nerdy
uh,
Optometrist.
I keep saying this that I have stolen the name, but I do talk to all the nerds out there. So I just take the name just because I'm not as nerdy as my guests.
I don't know. I think you're up there with us. Sorry
I'll
to tell you.
I'll take that. But with that, thank you so much once again, Doctor, for your time. And I really, really appreciate you sharing all the insights. Good luck with all the amazing thing coming at MetaMed. And thank you so much.
No, thank you, Ukti. It's a pleasure, as always.